A wine glass shattered against the porch. "Don't waste my time," she snapped, brushing dust from her silk sleeve. "A poor farmer could never offer me a future." He stood silent, boots worn, hat low, the scent of earth still clinging to him. Around them, laughter from her friends cut like cold steel. But in less than a year, the soil he tended would make him the most powerful name in town. Would you have walked away or waited for the world to turn? Tell us in the comments. Before we begin, hit subscribe. It's appreciated. Ezekiel lived for the land. Each dawn found him among the rows of golden wheat, the scent of rich soil rising as the sun stretched over the fields. His farm was modest but thriving, a patch of earth he'd nurtured with calloused hands and quiet determination. To him, the fields weren't just crops. They were a promise of independence, a future built by perseverance. He'd known Clara since childhood, her family's mansion perched high above the valley. She was elegance and influence wrapped in silk, her world measured in wealth and whispers of power. Ezekiel believed, perhaps naively, that their shared past might bridge the gap between their lives. One evening, with the courage of years of unspoken feelings, he approached her doorstep with hope in his chest. Her rejection was swift and public, words like polished blades. "A farmer can't give me the life I deserve," she said, loud enough for her friends to smirk behind crystal glasses. The laughter lingered even after the door slammed, echoing through Ezekiel's mind long after the night fell silent. He returned to his fields, each sunrise a reminder of what she had dismissed. But humiliation hardened into resolve. He saw more than soil beneath his feet. He saw opportunity. Droughts were coming, markets were shifting, and those who truly understood the land would survive. Ezekiel began planning, listening, saving every coin, and watching for the moment when fortunes might change. What would you have done in his place? Walked away from the sting of rejection, or turned it into quiet fuel for something greater? The next season brought storms, of weather and of fate. Heavy rains swept through the valley, drowning fields that weren't carefully tended. Ezekiel, already ahead of the curve, had reinforced his irrigation and diversified his crops. While neighboring farms faltered, his harvest stood tall and vibrant, a beacon of resilience in a landscape of ruin. Buyers took notice. Meanwhile, the town's grand families, Clara's among them, faced mounting debt. Their wealth, built on appearances and risky ventures, began to crumble. Whispers spread through the market square. Clara's father had overextended his loans. Creditors circled like hawks. Ezekiel listened quietly as he hauled grain sacks to waiting wagons, every deal a brick in the foundation of a new future. Investors approached him with offers, astonished at his yields and his steady hand. He bought the empty fields of neighbors who had given up, each acre strengthening his presence. The very soil that others abandoned became his empire. By late summer, his name was on contracts across the county, his farm stretching beyond the horizon. Clara saw the changes from her window. She passed him on the road once, her carriage slowing as she recognized the confident man on horseback. Gone were the worn boots and sun-beaten hat. In their place stood someone who carried quiet authority. Her friends whispered now, but not with laughter, only curiosity and a tinge of regret. Ezekiel never sought revenge. He poured his profits into the town, repairing roads, building schools, ensuring no family went hungry when the next storm came. Still, each success seemed to cast a sharper contrast against the memory of her scornful dismissal. One autumn evening, as the harvest festival lights flickered across the valley, Clara's family estate finally went up for auction. The crowd murmured as Ezekiel stepped forward, pen in hand. By night's end, the house on the hill, once a symbol of untouchable privilege, bore his signature. And as the hammer struck, signaling the deal complete, an electric hush fell over the room. The same community that once pitied the poor farmer now watched him reshape their future, 1 acre at a time. What would happen when Clara realized the man she'd mocked now owned the very town she called her throne? The auction hall grew silent as the final bid echoed. Clara's family, pale and tight-lipped, signed the last of their papers, their fortune dissolved in a few strokes of ink. Outside, the autumn air smelled of wood smoke and change. Ezekiel stood at the steps, the deed to their grand estate folded neatly in his coat pocket. The same pocket where he once carried seed packets and broken dreams. When Clara approached, her footsteps were hesitant, her confidence gone. The woman who once laughed with her friends now searched his face for a trace of the boy she had dismissed. But Ezekiel met her eyes only briefly, his expression steady, neither cruel nor forgiving. This wasn't about revenge, it was about reclamation. The townspeople watched from the square as news spread. The farmer who had been mocked for his dirt-stained hands now owned the land beneath nearly every home, the businesses that kept the town alive, even the mansion that had once been Clara's fortress of pride. Before the night ended, Clara whispered an apology. Ezekiel offered a quiet nod and turned toward the hills where lanterns lit the vast fields he now commanded. The power balance had shifted forever. What do you think happens next? Does he welcome her into a future she once rejected? Or does he walk away for good? Share your thoughts below while the moment hangs in the cool evening air. Dawn broke over a town transformed. Where once a handful of wealthy families dictated every decision, Ezekiel now held the reins, not through force, but through persistence and vision. The mansion on the hill, once a symbol of exclusion, opened its doors as a community center where farmers and merchants planned a stronger future together. Clara stayed in town, humbled, working alongside neighbors she once overlooked. She watched as Ezekiel used his wealth to build new irrigation systems, sponsor schools, and fund fair wages for field hands who had known only hardship. His quiet leadership turned profit into purpose, proving that dignity could outlast arrogance. For Ezekiel, the victory was never about personal revenge. It was about rewriting what power looked like. The same soil that had stained his boots now nourished opportunity for everyone, regardless of name or past. Children played where gates had once locked them out. And merchants thrived in a market no longer ruled by old money. This story isn't just about one man's triumph. It's about dignity, resilience, and the strength to rise. When the world says you can't, Ezekiel's victory echoes the countless moments when people underestimated for their background, break through barriers and soar higher than anyone imagined. But how many voices like his are still ignored? Today, until they grow too powerful to be silenced? The lesson is clear. True strength isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. Show some love with a like and subscribe to stay inspired.